Welcome to the Ascension Path with Twin Essence. I'm Lacey.
And I'm Marley, and we're your Starseed Lightworker and Psychic Medium hosts.
We're identical twins with spiritual abilities and Starseed missions on Earth. On the Ascension Path, we discuss what it's like to be identical twins serving in a spiritual capacity and provide insights into our work as Starseeds. We create a sacred space to receive channeled messages, intuitive teachings, and expansive conversations that elevate your frequency and support your evolution. Join us to learn about navigating the path to Ascension and becoming the most authentic, aligned version of you. Take what resonates and leave the rest. We are traveling to the star system Hadar today. So, Hadar is located in the Centaurus constellation, and it's actually Beta Centauri specifically. Now, we've previously talked about Alpha Centaurian Starseeds and Alpha Centaurian Star beings, which are in the Alpha Centauri star system, again, located in the same constellation, Centaurus. But now we're moving on over to Beta Centauri, which is where we talk about the star Hadar. We are digging into Hadarian Starseeds. This is definitely a more niche starseed type, I would say, right, Marley? Yes, niche in terms of we've talked about Alpha Centaurians being niche. Now we're niching down even further to another star in the same constellation. Absolutely. So the first time we connected with a Hadarian starseed, it was really, really interesting because we really had never felt this kind of energy from a star being before, and it came through very golden. Yes. So what's interesting too is it's I say golden as well. There were some, I think, pops of silver maybe in there, which kind of reminds me of like that metallic look. But they have a very quiet or calm, reserved, gentle energy, as opposed to Alpha Centaurians, who Alpha Centaurians I feel like come on a little bit stronger than Hadarians do. Absolutely. Hadarians are very gentle, actually. Like when we first started connecting to them, we were like, "Can you speak up?" Like it felt very quiet and calm and very gentle. It felt very submissive, for lack of a better word. They are not going to butt in. They're not going to insert themselves into a conversation and make their presence known unless it's needed. And they very much strike me as the type of person who would be more in the background of things, probably. They're definitely a subtle energy, and I feel that you'd have to call on them to work with them. They are not, like to what Lacey said, they're not going to butt in. They really need to be called on in order to enter into your energetic space and work with them. They're not the kind of star being that's going to just butt in and try to make contact. Which is which is interesting because I would contrast it to like the galactic founder types. So when we talk about like Pleiadians and Sirians and Lyrans, Orions, Andromedans, like they all like butt in. I feel like they're more than willing to make themselves known. Whereas Hadarians, it's almost like you come to us and then we will be able to talk to you and we will make contact with you then. But first, make yourself known to us. They also have this imagery that they bring through of a dove when we started first connecting to them. And it was very much this symbol of peace and this presence of great calmness. Very nurturing energy, I would say, to them. I would also add that I feel like a lot of their star seeds would be cancers I mean that in astrology terms, like Cancer suns, because it's very, very gentle and nurturing energy. I also think so. The dove thing is interesting because it's like the symbol of peace, but it also feels like this heaven on earth idea. And when we connect with them, there's very much this ideology of like heaven on earth or that type of phrase coming through. And I think it's because they are so positively polarized. They're so gentle, they're so nurturing, they're so loving that when you, as a human coming into contact with them, that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like it's very much like this, um, almost like this angelic presence or this angelic kingdom that you enter into if you were to visit their star system. Absolutely. I do see them as more humanoid in physical appearance, but they come through with that gold energy. Sometimes it might be silvery, but it is more humanoid. I don't feel like, unless you're getting something different, Marley, like I don't have any like big physical trait that's like defining in order to have you be able to like discern. It's a Hadarian. I don't have anything like big jumping out. That would be
No,
like the trademark of a Hadarian Starseed.
I'd
Or
say like
Starseed.
I would see them in like the gold, but I'd see silver and white too. And I feel like their frames are very slender and slight.
Yes.
They come across more feminine energetically. So if we put them next to an Elvis Centaurians, feel a little bit more masculine energetically when we're talking about divine energies. And then the other thing is I actually see them, so like triangulating that, let's add in Palladians because interestingly enough, Hadarians, Alpha Centaurians, and Palladians, they feel like a little bit similar energetically in colors. Because like Lacey and I always see them through colors. And so I see them all posed next to each other, but I can definitely tell the differences in them. Like a Palladian star being, one, they're going to be more initiating. They're not afraid to make contact with humans and make their presence known.
Mm-hmm.
But Palladians are super passionate and dedicated to things, dedicated to their causes and their beliefs, whereas Hadarians, they feel um even more subdued or gentle in that respect. So I'm not saying they're not like in human form that they can't be committed to causes, but they're the type of human incarnation where they're going to go with the flow more, whether it's in alignment with them or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think the nurturing piece is what's going to set them apart from a Palladian.
Yes.
Because there's a different nurturing energy with a Hadarian that a Palladian doesn't have completely. Like a Palladian has that deep sense of empathy and they're very dedicated and they're very
Passionate.
sensitive and passionate. But a Hadarian has a little more of this nurturing energy where it's like they're going to take care of their people, they're going to take care of their animals, they're going to take care of their causes. It's a different type of approach than the fighting for what you believe in approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
The other thing is they're actually showing me this imagery of a pond, and it's ironically like a golden magical type of pond. And but it is in reference to looking at reflections.
Mm.
And they are talking about one of their purposes or missions with their starseeds on Earth is to be a reflection for humanity.
Mm.
So this is a really, really, really interesting way to describe a mission. It's about reflecting out either positive or negative things for the sake of humanity's ascension and growth. So it's like that mirroring aspect. Like I don't know how else to describe that. It's like when someone, I'm just gonna like, let me think of an example, or let's see, they're gonna bring through an example here. It's like when you're really annoyed with someone who shows up late all the time. Like you're like, my time is not more important than your time. I'm thinking of Dorit Kemsley. Bring it through in terms that I would understand. Dorit Kemsley from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is the example. Like she shows up late to everything. It pisses everyone off in the group, and they're all like, "Oh, you think you're better than us? You think your time is more important than us?" And she's like, "Oh no, I don't. That's just my thing." Um, and it's an example of that person's behavior reflecting something back to you. Like if you're annoyed with it, like let's examine why you're annoyed with it. Is it because you're making assumptions about how that person feels about you or what they think of you? Are you making assumptions about whether they respect you enough or not? Or is it that you would simply never even think to do that to someone? So you're judging someone else being able to do that to someone. So it's, I hope this makes sense, but it's this reflection and this mirroring back to humanity, positive and negative aspects of their existence, essentially, for their own evolution and growth.
So in this example, do you think the Hadarian Starseeds are late?
No, I don't feel like they're late. I just think that was like an example of a more negative
Oh, yes.
behavior that they can reflect back to people who might need to examine why they're judging that behavior.
This they just brought another example, pop culture reference, but this is like the opposite spectrum. So this is a more By the way, I just love when this happens when we channel because like my mind went blank and I was gonna say something and then all of a sudden it was like Lacey's going to speak now and then Lacey started talking and then in my mind it was like we needed an example and Lacey's like they're gonna bring an example. So I love when these things happen.
This is truly the magic of the twin magic portal that we open in individual sessions. It'll be like, we know. I just want to point this out for anyone listening. When we are in the Starseed portal membership and we are guiding sessions, or if it's an activation or a more immersive experience for members, even when we're just giving transmissions, like we know when the other person's going to speak during the channeling and transmission. Like we can have our eyes closed during the entire session. Like when you watch it back, if somebody's actually watching it and not doing the activation, like we don't open our eyes and look and be like, are you going to speak? Like we literally don't have to, because that's the energy being connected in the portal that we open.
It's just I just love like when we weave like that. But this example they're gonna give, so opposite side of the spectrum, because I asked the question, right? Like, would a Hadarian Starseed be late in this example, right? And we're like, I don't know, that's just a negative reflection example. Well, the example they just brought me is from the show Rivals. Lacey and I love Rivals, new season coming out. And there's a character in Rivals, Taggy, who's like this, I don't know, young character trying to find her way in life, right? Trying to figure out what her passion is, what she wants to do with her life. But she's like really, really shy and timid and like very naive. And so people will take advantage of her. And there's this other character on the show who is older and there's like a little bit of chemistry between them. And like she gets really disappointed in him often because she's just like, you're better than this, or you did this and it broke my heart, and gets really disappointed all the time in him. And so they gave me this example as like a Hadarian Starseed being Taggy, where Taggy's like so kind-hearted and means well, and it's just like Taggy and her dog. Living off the land, just following their path, figuring things out. And then, like, as a Hadarian Starseed, people can take advantage of the kindness and people can disappoint you. But she, like, this character reflects so much good out to others on this show that, like, every time they do something that's maybe morally or ethically wrong, like, Taggy's the one that opposes that and they see that and that makes them really uncomfortable in their ethics, right? And their morals. So that's what they show me as this mirroring impact with Hadarians, where that kind-hearted, nurturing, kind of like this pure soul of good nature, where like that can get reflected and it like opposes some people who maybe are acting on like a more negative polarity so that they can see like a different way of being.
That's a really, really, really good example. I also want to point out this theme of boundaries for Hadarian Starseeds on Earth. So, because they are bringing that through strong as well, they struggle with boundaries. And again, like this is different than a Palladian. We're using Palladians because they're similar as a compare and contrast here, but it's a different level of issues of boundaries. I think a Hadarian Starseed is going to easily fall into a nurturing role where the assumption of caregiving and caretaking is very much there, and then they kind of open their eyes one day and they're like, how did I get here? How did I get here? I should have said something. Or how do I say something now and set a boundary for myself without looking mean, without looking awful, because I did agree to this, but I've changed my mind now.
And that's that going with the flow piece I mentioned earlier, meaning they're more of the follower role, I would say, than like an outstanding leader role. It's not to say that that a Hadarian Starseed can't be a leader, right? But they're more of that role of, I'm okay. You know what? It's not worth the fight for me. I don't want to get in the argument. Like if they're at a restaurant, they're not going to send the food back if it's wrong. They're not going to send the drink back if it tastes bad. Like they're going to go with the flow and make the best of it because they don't want to cause any ripples and or waves, and they just want to, I think, keep the peace or keep the status quo. And so I do feel like the thing coming up with that is Hadarian Starseeds are like your peacemakers, more conflict avoidant, I would say.
Would
And
you say mediators too? Or no?
that's a good question. If they're asked to intervene, right? We talked about at the beginning, like you need to make contact with them, invite them in. They don't necessarily seek it out. So I think from a mediation perspective, if they're being invited in to help solve a conflict, I think that they could be skilled at that. I think compromise, like that's the word coming up. Like they maybe are able to help others find a compromise or find a happy medium. Whereas within themselves, they're more prone to just go with it.
That's a good point. And there's two things that I think to bring up with this. One that I don't want to forget to come back to, but it's this concept of how they handle conflict, especially when it relates to more personal situations like family. And the other thing that they're bringing up as a growth edge, actually, is this concept of how a Hadarian Starseed is defining certain roles in their life. Okay. So, not just for themselves, whether it's I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter. These are just the ones that are coming to my mind right now. It's how they are defining distinct roles, but it's like, how are they defining family? I feel like Hadarian Starseeds, one of their growth edges is going to be struggling with asserting boundaries, healthy boundaries, without completely like cutting someone off or completely not having boundaries and losing themselves in something. So it's this concept of like the way they're saying it to me is like just because they're family doesn't mean you should let them do XYZ to you.
Yes.
Like a Hadarian Starseed might get stuck on like, yeah, but they're family. Like they might get stuck on those 3D traditional like definitions
And
instead
that's
of rewriting it for themselves.
and that's what's coming up for me too. Like when we look at like a Hadarian Starseed and 3D programming, that would be an area that they would have a hard time breaking out of the programming or breaking out of the conditioned beliefs because those roles people are placed into, they feel so strongly about it. It's that peacemaker quality to them, the ability to not rock the boat. There's another phrase, it just
Make
lost.
themselves smaller, blend into
Making
the
them,
wall, like
yes, there's another phrase I'm missing though that they were just saying.
conflict avoidant.
Conflict avoidant. Oh, people pleaser.
Mm.
So that's another thing, like when we look at the 3D programming or the conditioned beliefs, something that might be hard for them in human incarnation is that people pleaser bit to them. Because again, they go with the flow. Like, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to make waves.
And I just want to reiterate, they're saying one of these growth edges is looking at how you're defining things in your life and being able to stray from a traditional 3D definition of something. So, how do you define family? It doesn't need to be what everybody else is defining family as. How do you define friend? How do you define the role that you're in?
And the other piece to like straying from the mainstream traditional or status quo definition is that like it's a oh my God, it just went out of my head. Why do things keep going out of my head? You
It's
just
the
said
energies.
I feel like it's actually happening subtly and then like it's like really like a little blip and then it's like if I can't get it out fast enough, I lose it. I think
Listen
that's
that
what's
too
going
this
on.
episode, yeah.
'Cause it's like I'm like waiting for you, I was waiting for you to I was gonna
Yes,
butt in and cut
yes,
you
me
off.
too, me too.
And then I was like, wait to I'm like, she's just gonna finish two sentences and
But
all of a sudden it was like
I
gone
just want to
then.
point out though that this concept of I think that's what a Hadarian struggles with because they
Yeah.
want to speak up, but then they like hold back because they're like, I don't want to interrupt, I don't want to be rude, I don't want to be bring attention to myself.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to point out though that Hadarians also they're telling me that they have like a secret sense of humor. Like you just need to get to know them, and they're really funny, like quirky people. They'll make you laugh like hell. It reminds me of like the image they're giving me actually is like being in the library studying, but you're in like one of the little study corners, and then you're like getting shushed because you're like giggling at whatever they're saying to you.
I feel like they unlike they bring up to me or that's so true. They're like the shy, they remind me of like the shy kid who's like actually super sarcastic. Like the person who isn't comfortable with a lot of people in the class, but like if you're the right person, they will show that side to you. I don't know why, of course I'm talking about it like in the frame of like high school. But it just reminds me of like the shy kid who's like really just really good at like laying down like a quiet under the breath one-liner about like something the teacher said that you're just kind of good one. Like can you laugh at it?
Yeah, they're interesting beings, especially like you look at their growth edges of setting boundaries, you look at the growth edge of how you're defining roles in your life, and then you look at that mission and purpose for many of them that has to do with being a mirror and being a reflector of the current environment for other people to go inward. I get the sense that a Hadarian starseed might get really like embarrassed if they're like put on the spot or like called on in a class and they don't expect it. They're not going to be someone that
Like they're camera shy, a little bit more camera shy.
Hate public
Um,
speaking. They
like
would hate public
if
speaking.
you're in a classroom or a Zoom room and they're like have to come off of mute, they might be like, do I want to speak up? Like they don't want to draw any attention to themselves.
Yeah.
It's a real interesting energy, and I think the big message here is to allow yourself to take up space.
It's also part of that deep sensitivity I think they have. Like I do think they're very, very, very sensitive souls. And so they're really good at like as a quieter energy, as a soul with a quieter energy, they're really actually good at holding space for others. And so I think of like being a school counselor that somebody goes to share about a bad experience they've had. They'd be great at holding space for that. Or even in the workplace, like I think they do really well um with like medical, like sensitive medical information. I also think they would do really well, as weird as this sounds, like with like information systems type roles. Not because like maybe because one, it could be less interaction with people, but like it's almost like a quiet, like a underdog hustler type vibe I get, where like they're really good at doing their job, but maybe they're not, like they don't want to take the call. Like, let's do it all over email. I don't want to have to call you and talk to you about it, but I am really good at what I do, and like that's how they would handle it, I feel like.
I also think that's a good point that you bring up because one of the big things with a Hadarian Starseed on Earth is that they are a safe place for people to land. Like, and that's part of that nurturing energy. You feel comfortable being yourself, you feel comfortable being authentic in their energy, you feel comfortable if you need to confide in them. They are often going to be the safe space to land for many, many people. And it's different from other star seeds. It's not the same as an Arcturian, it's not the same as a Palladian. It's this, you go to them when you need to be taken care of in a different way.
I also think like the thing coming through is they are like this heart space holder. Like I feel like they can just hold you in that heart space, and you might, even if you're the most insensitive person ever, you might not even be aware of it energetically that it's happening, but you would be willing to share things with them or admit things maybe that you wouldn't to other people. Like they just feel like somebody where like people would confide in them and they'd be able to hold it. Like I see them as like holding secrets almost. Like they
Mm.
could be the secret keeper holder because they're like like their ability to like not judge others, I feel like it's a skill they have.
And if there's one thing anyone can learn, any type of starseed on Earth can learn, I think better than anyone else, it'd be look to a Hadarian starseed to teach you how to be non-judgmental.
I agree. I think that's what's actually so interesting. That's a paradox in itself, right? In a human incarnation, Hadarian starseeds are probably going to struggle with their own judgment of self.
Mhm.
Um, but they don't reflect that out to the world. Like they're very non-judgmental actually with others, and they can really hold that space.
And their capacity to hold others in very vulnerable moments and in such a safe, judgment-free way is so interesting. It's so expansive and like infinite compared to where they might be harder on themselves. I think that the self-judgment is a little bit of a growth edge, but it's also like if they can practice even an ounce of the judgment-free, I don't know what to call it, like the judgment freedom, free from judgment skills that they use with the outside world on themselves, like they're going to be all the more better for it.
I also think too, I will point out like some of that judgment is programmed into them. So I think it is woven into their cosmic DNA and it's something that they could experience as a growth edge, but it's also heavily programmed in a lot of us as humans on Earth. So that's like a double whammy, I think, that judgment thing and working on that within themselves. And the more that you can deprogram and change those beliefs, the more freedom you'll experience, right? And the more that you're going to change how you view yourself.
I think forgiveness is another piece to this because, and this is really interesting, but the way they are describing it to me is that Hadarian actually struggles a little bit with forgiveness. And what I mean by that is that they think they are forgiving people, but they are actually
Mm.
just letting people run them over
Bypassing.
and bypassing the feelings of actual real forgiveness. So I think this is a really interesting concept because Marley and I actually were talking about this the other day. And in terms of like 3D programming, we often will see people default to forgiveness as this like traditional roles of like the good guy, the bad guy. And they act like forgiveness is like you forgive yourself and you forgive that person for every single thing. And then that's forgiveness and you're taking the high
And you
road.
move on.
And it's actually like that right there is actually a programmed 3D definition of forgiveness. Whereas in more of a higher consciousness definition of forgiveness, it's less about the role that you were in, whether it's victim or oppressor. It's more about being able to have awareness and understanding of the lessons and reasoning behind the event and being able to release yourself from it and untangle yourself from the other individuals that are a part of the situation.
I think too, like we talk so much about understanding and acceptance as parts of this forgiveness process. And it's really just about understanding why something happened or to you or why you did what you did. Being able to accept that that's a part of the path, right? And then from there, being able to untangle and move on. We always say it's not absolution for somebody who's maybe done something to you. Um, but it's this ability to recognize your role and growth and path, and that other person maybe has a role and a growth path, but it's not yours, and that's okay. And like untangling the two so that you can transcend and move forward.
It's a really good example of those definitions we were talking about. Like, how are they defining some of these belief systems and
Mhm.
structures? Whereas a Hadarian starseed on Earth might fall more into some of those traditional 3D matrix definitions, and they're encouraging you to think outside the box. What if you change that definition and then you see how you feel about something? Like, it reminds me a little bit of Christ consciousness. Like, I don't use the phrase Christ consciousness because I don't feel a strong affiliation with any sort of organized religion. But there is a way you can still use the words Christ consciousness to describe something and not have it affiliated with a religion.
They also bring up where a Hadarian starseed is putting their energy. And what I mean by this is how conscious are they of their own alignment, their own needs, their own desires on their path? So I think there's a variety of ways this could play out and manifest in a human incarnation for a Hadarian starseed. But I think some of them are so ingrained into the roles that they play in these 3D roles in their life and on their path that they neglect the self and their own desires and alignment and needs. And then other ones, they are consciously aware of their desires and needs, but they almost like shove it down. Like it's almost like ignore the devil on my shoulder or ignore the elephant in the room. Like when they feel it bubbling up in them, like they want to say something or they feel like different about something and opposing to someone's viewpoint. Or maybe it's they've committed to go to something and they don't really want to go to it, right? They don't want to do it, but they're conditioned to believe if they don't go, something bad will happen or the person will be upset and they don't want to make a big deal out of it, right? So it's like this idea of they do actually know what they want deep down, but they're ignoring it or they're shoving it down at the sake of probably to please others.
So the question really becomes, are you brave enough to listen to those nudges? Are you brave enough to take the aligned action? Are you brave enough to even have the audacity of admitting whatever those desires and dreams actually are to yourself as a first step? It's a big question, right? For Hadarian Starseed on Earth right now.
So we have talked about Hadarian star seeds, their traits, what they look like and feel like energetically. We've talked about some of their patterns or growth edges that we see in their star seeds' human incarnations. If you think you're Hadarian starseed, let us know in the comments. Otherwise, experiment a little bit and call in the Hadarian star beings and see what messages you receive.